It's Impact with the Florida Star, the largest, oldest, and most read African-American newspaper in Northeast Florida and South Georgia. And now, here's the host, the publisher of the award-winning Florida Star, Clara McLaughlin.
This is Opio Saccone. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Florida Star's radio program, Impact. We caught up with local filmmaker Solomon Manati. He just had his film Cosigner at the Sunray Theater, as well as local author Rhonda Standsberry. She has a new book out called The Case of the Brown Paper Bag about numbers running here in Jacksonville, as well as Al Sharpton's eulogy for Aretha Franklin right here on Impact. This is Opio with Impact. I'm here with Solo. We just came out of the showing of the Cosigner. Incredible movie right here in Jacksonville. How you doing, brother?
Man, I'm good, man. I'm good.
Tell us about what this movie is, where we are right now.
Well, we're in Sunray Cinema, but the movie's an action movie. It's basically the cosigner. I am the cosigner because I had end up accidentally cosigning on somebody else's debt, you know. A friend of mine's debt in the movie, and it brought me into a world. I had to, you know, you seen it.
Right, oh yeah.
Yeah.
So, in the movie, there was a lot of fist fighting in there. Now, there was guns, and there was knives, and there was killing, but there was a lot of fist fighting, and this guy is
really
kind of an MMA?
Guns out of it, yeah, it's MMA, basically. Different, Kali is the trapping, and we did a little movie martial arts, you know, you got to do little spin-offs and all, you know, spin kicks and flips and all of that, but yeah.
So tell me, how long did it take to make this movie? What's your next movie?
Well, we working on Octagona right now. This movie, it took 2 years due to Maurice's death and other situations and people having to move. This is a lot happened during this movie, and the weather.
No.
Rain here a lot of it. So, but yeah, it took 2 years to make, and it's just now getting premiered. We tried to premiere it last week or a couple weeks ago, and just didn't something. It's been a long time coming, man.
So tell us your full name.
Solomon Manati.
Now, you also had a film called Solomon Manati, didn't you?
Yes, Solomon Manati, yeah.
So tell us about that film.
Well, that film is basically, it's a piece of artwork, man. It's just basically flashbacks to the whole movie. You get shot in the head, and your life flashes between your eyes, you know what I'm saying, right before your eyes, and that's when you get all these things happening. So it's basically a timeline of events, you know, so...
I remember when Maurice Hobbs was in the movie, in the news about dying, and he played in this movie. This guy was an incredible actor.
Yeah. He played in Solomon Manati. He played Little Solo. He actually played the younger version of me in the movie, and then he played gangster in this movie. So, but yeah, man.
You guys did a piece to him. It was a memorial. Talk a little bit about who he was, Maurice Hobbs.
Well, Maurice Hobbs, that's actually his father right there. He's a good friend of mine, so I consider him like a nephew, you know, little brother. Yeah, he was upcoming music artist. So that's what these songs here. It's not really rap. It's not blue moon. It's not. I don't know how to explain his music, but it's true. You know what I mean?
Right.
So he was on the verge of blowing up at the time, and this time came too early, you know. He just turned 18, 3 days.
That was in 2017, wasn't it?
16. Yeah. He's God, I'm addicted to that right now. So, but yeah, it was 3 days after his birthday. So yeah, that's 2 years ago.
Well, let me tell you, Jacksonville, used to be a film town back in the 1920s. Yeah. Now, you are making a contribution to Jacksonville and the film arts.
Well, it's not just me, it's Adolfo. We got a team of film guys here all working together. So we're actually trying to make our own little Hollywood over here, you know.
All right. And we're talking to Solomon Manati. He actually had a movie called The Cosigner. We're just coming out of there. And your next movie is what? And when is it going to premiere?
Octagona, as in like the UFC octagon. Right. But 8 corners of the city, Jacksonville, so that's what it's really about. You know what I'm saying?
All right, if people want to see the Cosigner, what do they do? How do they contact you?
Woo! Right now, we're waiting to go on to DVD and Digi. So this was just a premiere for us. You know what I mean? Just to let the cast see it. You know, just have a good experience here.
All right, thank you. Appreciate the interview.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it.
All right. This is Opio. I am speaking to now author Rhonda Standsberry. How you doing, Rhonda?
I am well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Well, you got a book out about the numbers and Bolita and all this really interesting stuff that I learned. Tell me what the book is named and tell us how you're connected to that here in Jacksonville.
Well, the name of the book is Numbers 35 and 53, The Case of the Brown Paper Bag. This book was written about my father, Frank Price Chico Baker, who was a numbers runner back in the 60s. They called them racketeers, numbers runners, Bolita men, Bolita kings.
Now, tell us about the numbers racket. The numbers I know on the east side when I was a kid, you would come on the east side and there are anybody know numbers, and it was like a big thing when I was a kid. Tell us a little bit about what the numbers is and how does it work.
Well, what it was is it was a way that people played numbers, just like people play lotteries today. One of the games that they played is where they tossed the bag from one person to the other. It was balls in the bag, just as you see in the Florida lottery, from 0 to 100. And you would catch that bag at the very end, and when you cut the bag, whatever number was in your hand was the number that was called. If that number was 35, that was the number. The numbers itself paid $35 to the dollar. So if you played $1 and won, that was, it was $65 to the dollar. So if you paid $1 and won, you won $65.
Wow. But how many people would play numbers?
Oh, thousands of people would play numbers.
How do you get thousands of people? How do you organize it and get thousands of people numbers in so you can pay them out properly? How does that work?
Because what you would get people to work for you and actually sell numbers for you. So an average Bolita banker is what they would call themselves, would have 10 to 15 people selling numbers for him, and they would in turn have people buying numbers.
Mm-hmm. And then was there one type of game? Talk about the other type of games and how do you hit the numbers in the various games?
There were different numbers. There was something called the bond, the total, the night house. The night house was another game where they tossed a bag. They would also use numbers from the banking institutions, the large banking institutions. And a lot of that information would be posted in the Wall Street Journal. They would use what they call the aqueduct horse races to determine what the number would be. So there were different ways that the numbers were calculated. I just remember a lot. On Saturday, my father would hear what the number was and go and total up and see how much money was made and how much money he used to pay out. Then on Sundays after church, we would ride around, and I was just a little girl, like 9 years old, and I never really knew exactly what was going on, whether he was making money, paying out money. All I saw was a lot of money transferring hands. And I tell people I saw a $1,000 bill at 9 years old.
So what was the life like for a father who was, I guess they call him a policy man. The white people call him policy men.
They call them policy men or policy makers. Policy makers, they say it's just cheap insurance. Mm-hmm. But all in all, they were bankers. They were people that backed the numbers operation.
What was life like as a child of a father who ran numbers?
Well, I mean, I had a wonderful childhood. I had an advantaged childhood. But my father was definitely a father. I say he was a daddy. A great guy, well-read, extremely knowledgeable, an extremely intelligent person. But he wanted to be a pro ball player. My father had vitiligo, which is depiction of the skin. So he was unable to play pro ball. He had gotten drafted for the Pittsburgh Pirates, and the doctor would not release him, the team's doctor, because he could not take the sun. So without being educated, dropping out of college, he had to find something to do, and he was introduced to Bolita.
Now, I know studying the numbers, because I kind of studied it, because I looked at it like almost every store you go into, corner stores, they're running numbers. You know, that's what the lottery is. That's these scratch-off tickets. Those are numbers. And
those are numbers. That's just modern day Bolita.
Right. And so you had black men that was running that, and black women in different parts of the country running those. And people would get in trouble. Their life would be upended. But when the government, and so it was some kind of moral deal, but when the government started making money off of it, somehow it became okay. And now, you know, the government make billions of dollars off of the lottery.
And only puts 27% back into education. I am looking, when I'm driving around in the city as I am right now, I'm looking at corner stores and I'm looking at slum and blight, but these people are selling lottery tickets. Yep. Nobody's building any new homes, new apartment complexes, any new low-income rentals. You got people that stay on Section 8 list for 2, 3, 4 years. Some of that money could be diverted into some low-income housing.
Did you guys go to church growing up? Was your father judged as a negative person, or was he looked at as, hey, this is a great man in the community, don't have to work for the white people, and then ultimately makes money and is giving back to the community?
It was a 50-50 because my father did go to church. My father knew the Bible probably better than a lot of pastors. A lot of the people that didn't care for him, my daddy would just say they were sanctified but not satisfied. But my father was a very well-respected man in this city.
Now, talk about some of the, since you've been know about this as an adult, talk about some of the famous people that you know that may have been backed by Bolita men or numbers men, and how that racket ultimately. I would
just like to say that there are a lot of prominent attorneys in this city and judges who sold numbers. Their fathers were number runners, layoff men, and they were educated just like myself from Bolita money.
And wasn't one of the major boxers manager was a Bolita guy?
Exactly.
The Brown Bomber. What's his name? Joe Louis.
Yes. Joe Louis used to come to town a whole lot. He was in Jacksonville a whole lot. And one of the things that I did in a lot of my research in writing this book, the Negro League itself was sponsored a lot by Bolita activity.
This is Opio. I'm speaking to Rhonda Standsberry. She has a book on the numbers game, and her father here in Jacksonville was a big policy guy. And talk about the different jobs. There's the policy guy, there's the runners. Who else are they? Where do you go when the numbers... Huh?
There are people called checker-uppers, runners. Yeah.
Where do you go? Is there a place that your father went to get all of the runners' money, or did he have to go around and to get them? How did that work?
He just kind of made a lot of stops. Like I said, on Saturdays, my dad and I would make about 12 to 15 stops. I remember going down Moncrief, and there was a liquor store on Moncrief that he used to stop in and pick up like about 11 o'clock at night. There were hotels that he would go in. There were various places that numbers were being sold.
And how much money would he make? And was it weekly? Was it daily?
Yeah, a lot of the money was made daily. I mean, I would see thousands and thousands of dollars on a daily basis.
Wow. And talk about the government, how they treated your father, and some of the pitfalls of running numbers.
Well, very very badly. Back in about 1964, my father was running numbers in East Jacksonville with two other persons, and they actually arrested these two people, and because they really wanted my father is who they wanted. They said he was a little too uppity and arrogant. And because my father would not admit to being a part of the game or even knowing the people, he got charged with perjury. However, the case, when it did come to court, Judge Thomas Clary said to the jury that he thought that this man should be acquitted and acquitted quickly because this was not a case that was worthy of the American justice system. The jury came back with a verdict of not guilty, and my father walked away from that. But prior to that happening, for all of those years that these cases were going on, my father caught a case after he bought a 1968 Mercedes-Benz. He caught a drug charge because someone dropped drugs in his car, and he was framed for carrying heroin in his car. This case went on for several years again. I watched my dad's hair go from snow white, from black to snow white. That case finally came to court, and my father again was freed. But he still sold numbers throughout this whole thing.
Okay, so your book, tell us a little bit about, tell us again the name of your book, where people can get it.
Well, the name of my book is Numbers 35 and 53, The Case of the Brown Paper Bag, and it's sold on Amazon, eBay. So if you just go on and click on Amazon and put in Rhonda Baker Standsberry, the book will pop up. The book has a lovely title and picture designed by Gerald Lilliard of Lilliard Studios. And if you take a look at the cover, it just encompasses everything. It tells the entire story on the front cover of the book.
Man, I read it. It was incredible. I learned so much. And it was great that I had studied numbers before, because to be able to read your father's story, that allowed me to be able to take a person that's in my own city and kind of look at it in 3D. Really, really good book. Again, tell us the name of the book and where they can get it.
It's Numbers 35 and 53, The Case of the Brown Paper Bag. And let me tell you a little bit about the reason I say Numbers 35 and 53. Mm-hmm. Most of the people that played numbers, Opio, had their favorite numbers. My father only played 35. And if you know anything about gambling, you always back that number up. So this is why it was 35 and 53. Then I added The Case of the Brown Paper Bag because actually my father's attorney was Earl Johnson Sr. And he said, this is the case of the brown paper bag. His comment to the jury at that time was, so every black man that walks around with a brown paper bag is selling numbers or bonita. So that's how I came up with the title, Numbers 35 and 53, The Case of the Brown Paper Bag.
Yeah, it's so amazing how you can go to prison for doing that as if it was some kind of immoral thing, but now the government could do it. That's the main thing in my mind. And I do believe, like you, because so many people play the numbers at these corner stores right now, they need to put a lot more money, not only into education, but infrastructure, beautification, and give money to small businesses as well.
Neighborhood violation. It needs to be more money put into education.
Right. All right, Rhonda Standsberry, thank you.
Thank you so much, and have a great and wonderful day.
Do you know what media received the first Eagle Award by the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office for being the most factual? The Florida Star. Do you know which media solely addresses issues of concern for African Americans? The Florida Star. Do you know which media carries local, state, national, and international news regarding African Americans? The Florida Star. Do you know the only media that carries a special section for our youth at home and the schedule for 3 black television networks? Now you know the Florida Star. Northeast Florida's largest, oldest, and most read African American newspaper, serving since 1951 in more than 200 locations. The Florida Star. News you can use. News you can trust. The people's choice. Striving to make a difference. Subscribe today. Call 766-8834. That's 766-8834. Pick up the Florida Star at over 200 locations. Or to have it delivered, call 766-8834. The Florida Star. Speaking truth to power.
Please receive Rev Al Sharpton.
Thank you, Bishop, to the Franklin family and to all of us gathered. Aretha Franklin was not only an unparalleled artist, she was a civil rights activist and freedom fighter. It is easy to celebrate the gifts that God gives. It is more difficult when someone uses those gifts in ways that enhances humanity. Aretha Franklin was given special gifts, but she used it in a special way. And she would not want us to celebrate her without talking about she stood for something. She never shamed us. She never disgraced us. She never made us make excuses for her. She represented the best in our community, and she fought for our community until the end. I first met Miss Franklin when I was a teenager. I'd become youth director of New York Operation Breadbasket, and she would come to the strategy meetings with Reverend Jackson. And I would hear the stories of how when Dr. Martin Luther King could make payroll, Harry Belafonte and Aretha Franklin went on an 11-city tour to raise money for Martin Luther King. A lot of artists hang up Dr. King's photo, but Aretha went and raised money and gave it and worked free. Her daddy marched with Dr. King, and she never stopped supporting. As the years went by and I developed National Action Network, and she would call my radio show and have me come to her affairs. She called me one day, she said, Rev Al, I want to send you something. I said, yes, ma'am. She said, what's your home address? And she sent it. About 3 days later, I got a check made out National Action Network signed by Aretha Franklin. I saw about a month later, I said, you know, I was so blown away. I grew up looking up to you that I framed that check. She said, boy, don't you have a copy machine? She said, you don't know how I am with my bank accounts. You better cash that check and but all of her life, she supported the causes. She was a feminist before feminism was popular. She was a civil rights activist when it wasn't popular. She gave us pride, and she gave us a regal bar to reach. And that's why we're all here. We don't all agree on everything, but we agree on Aretha. And she fought for everybody. I remember when we were used to picket, Charles Williams and all of us jumping on the record industry, she said, now y'all leave Clive Davis alone, he's one of the good ones. She loved Clive and said, we got to remember what happened to the Irish and what happened to Jews and what happened to blacks. And that is why we remember her legacy, because she sang a song for all of us. She was the soundtrack of the civil rights movement. If you track where we are, you can follow where Aretha had us. That's why when I look at her and James Brown, whose daughter's here, and others who paid a price, that opened the door, but never forgot where they came from. She was rooted in the black church. She was bathed in the black church. And she took the black church downtown and made folks that didn't know what the Holy Ghost was shout in the middle of a concert. You never saw her perform without her doing gospel, because she never was one to forget where she came from. And that's why we give her this great home going. We thank her for what she did with Dr. King. We thank her for what she's done with Reverend Jackson. We thank her for what she's done with all of us. And that is why, you know, the other Sunday on my show, I misspelled respect. And a lot of y'all corrected me. Now I want y'all to help me correct President Trump to teach him what it means. And I say that because when word had went out that Miss Franklin passed, Trump said she used to work for me. No, she used to perform for you. She worked for us.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
Aretha never took orders from nobody but God. So Aretha, as you get your rest, my mother passed about 6 years ago. President Clinton, my mother and I had a deal. She said, I'll meet you on the other side. You live the way you're supposed to, and I'll see you in heaven. I said, well, Ma, they tell me there is no bodies in heaven, just spirits. How am I going to know you? I know her sons. How will I know her? She said, I tell you, you meet me at the exchange counter. I said, exchange counter? What kind of exchange counter? She said, well, right after you get through the Golden Gates, there's an exchange counter. That's where you hand in your cross to pick up your crown. We watched Aretha bear her cross down here. She had to sing with a broken heart. She had to work when she didn't get paid. She was a black woman in a white man's world. She bared her cross. She fought a good fight. Now it's time to crown the queen. I'll see you at the exchange counter where you can now hand in your cross. Ain't no cancer over there, Aretha. Hand in your cross and pick up your crown. As I take my seat, I've been asked to read this. Dear friends and family of Aretha, Michelle and I extend our heartfelt sympathies to all of those who gathered in Detroit, and we join you in remembering and celebrating the life of the Queen of Soul. From a young age, Aretha Franklin rocked the world of anyone who had the pleasure of hearing her voice, whether bringing people together through thrilling intersections of genres or advancing important causes through the power of song. Aretha's work reflected the very best of the American story in all of its hope and heart, its boldness, and its unmistakable beauty. In the examples she set both as an artist and a citizen, Aretha embodied those most revered virtues of forgiveness and reconciliation, while the music she made captured some of our deepest human desires, namely affection and respect. And through her voice, her own voice, Aretha lifted those of millions, empowering and inspiring the vulnerable, the downtrodden, and everyone who may have just needed a little love. Aretha truly was one of a kind. And as you pay tribute, know we'll be saying a little prayer for you, and we'll be thinking of all of Aretha's loved ones in the days and weeks to come. Sincerely, Barack Obama, 44th President of the United States.
All right, I got to get out of here. This is Opio Saccone. I will see you next time on Impact.